All right, a warm welcome to everyone who has already joined. I'm going to ask you for 1 minute more of your patience to allow attendees to drop in. And then we are almost ready to start the webinar on the data collection. All right, welcome once again. My name is Evelyn. I'm the Impact and Outreach Manager at Gogla, and also on behalf of our partners, IFC Lighting Global and the Efficiency for Access Coalition, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. The webinar will be on key findings of the Global Off-Grid Solar Market Report of the first half of this year, so covering January to June. If you've joined these webinars before, because we hold them every half year, you will notice that the setup is slightly different. The report has been growing and growing, and we figured it's just too much for us to put all our findings into one webinar. So we will actually highlight some key insights and then aim to have a much more interactive discussion with the audience via a Q&A. So before we start, I just want to do to share some practical remarks. Everyone except the presenter is muted, so you will not be able to interrupt and ask questions, but we really welcome you to submit your questions via the question box that you see on your GoToMeeting console. So whenever something pops up that you want to ask one of the panelists, or if you have a question in general, please feel free to drop it there and we will get to it at the end of the session. The session will be recorded and shared afterwards. We will email it to you. You will get it automatically. And also maybe one practical remark, because we're not dealing with the whole report in our webinar, we have added it as a handout to the webinar. You will find that in the GoToWebinar console as well. You can download it from there if you want to have a look at the report. If you are experiencing problems with audio, if you cannot hear us, please do let us know as well via the question box so that we can see if something is up. And I will be very strict. I will make sure that we have a hard stop at 4. Sorry, there's a small typo there. Before we start, I would actually like to have your input on 2 polls. And the first one is actually, we want to know who you are. So the poll should actually now be visible on your screen. And we gave 5 options. So are you a company with off-grid solar generation as a primary focus? Are you a company with off-grid solar appliances as a primary focus? Are you an investor or otherwise involved in the finance world? Are you a development partner or government agency, or do you fall in the bucket of other? For us, that's very informative to know because we know who we're holding this webinar for, and this will also help us in the future to make sure that we tailor to your needs. So if you haven't voted yet, please do so now. I will close it in just a few seconds. All right. Thank you. So as you can see, we have a good half of you are actually falling in the bucket of others. So maybe next time we should focus more on the other bucket, and then we can make a better differentiation there. Then the other question that we would like to know is, how familiar are you with the Global Off-Grid Solar Market Report, the public report? Now, it's of course now added as a handout, but is this the first time you've ever heard of it and you're joining this webinar for the first time? Have you already seen ones at some point? Or are you like an avid reader and we we have your attention all the time? All right. Actually, I'm going to talk through before the results. Maybe no, I'm influencing the results. Then let me close the poll just to make it proper. So you can see that there's actually a very, very small chunk is not familiar, which is very heartening. It's great to hear that everyone is on top of our reports. And then at least one report has been read by 56% of you. So that's great. So thanks for that. And that brings me actually to already almost diving into the meaty and fun bit of the webinar. Let me give you a very brief introduction of our expert panel. So there's myself. Then from Gogla, we also have Sylvia here with me. And Sylvia is our database specialist at Gogla and has been basically the motor that has been driving this report for, I think, for the last 6 rounds almost. Yeah. So she should actually, you should be familiar with Sylvia. Then also with us is Salma from Lighting Global, from IFC Lighting Global. There is Markena from CLASP, and there is Leo from Energy Saving Trust. But he has also been involved via IFC Lighting Global, and yeah, even longer than Sylvia. So he is he's even more furniture, so to say. I guess before we dive into key insights, Sylvia will kick off with the methodology of our data collection, so everyone is crystal clear on how we report and how we collect and how we report. It's quite important. And then after that, she and the rest of the panelists have chosen each one highlight or one insight from the report to share with you. And each panelist has 5 minutes to share this highlight. Don't forget to drop your questions in the question box when they come up. If they are for one specific presenter, we won't pause in between. So if they are for one specific presenter, then please mention that as well. All right, then I guess it's over to you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so we wanted to start, as always, with the methodology, because that brings us all on the same page. We all know what we talk about and the limitations of what we do. So as you all know, as we have seen, you're all already familiar, we conduct this data collection in partnership with IFC Lighting Global and Efficiency for Access Coalition. And the part on appliances is supported by UKAID, and this part has been added last round, and it was welcomed with a lot of interest. So we were very happy of being able to run it again this time, and we will keep doing it for the next 3 years together with our partners. And we are still running, though, also the main chunk which we collect, which is about solar lanterns, multi-light system, and solar home systems. In this part, we still focus on solar panels, battery, and at least 1 point systems. So systems that are sold as components or just top-up products are not included in the volumes you see. And we collect this data from our affiliates, which are companies either Gogla members that sell IFC quality verified products, or that they are engaging with the LEA program. So the volumes you'll see is not just quality verified products, but it goes beyond. And we're going to talk about later about our coverage, but we are very proud of saying that, we had a record in participation this time with 93 companies, and we aim to increase that over time. So we really see this as the go-to place to find these numbers. And just a little bit about why were appliances included. When we talk about appliances in this report, we refer to television, so water pumps, refrigeration units, and fans. And some of them are sold along with SHSs, and they bring life-changing developments. We see this as a new frontier for the off-grid solar sector. GOGLA has increasingly number of members involved, and they boost SDGs, and they actually enable people to have all the full benefits of electrification. So we are very proud of collecting data and informing about trends in that space together with the partners. And we are seeing an increased willingness of companies to participate. We as some of my colleagues will talk about later. Of course, there's limitations because it's the first start. We said this is the second round only that we do this. So we talk about solar power appliances, which are our focus, and especially for the larger ones. We have limitation of size. So for solar water pumps, we consider those that are less than 3 kilowatts and solar powered. So for example, the ones that you might be familiar about, India, a lot of them are diesel generator powered or much larger for, so not for households use, what we called, or micro enterprises. And refrigeration units, we are not considering the large walk-in units. If you have questions about all these things, feel free to pop them in the chat box. And we collect these sales separately from the off-grid solar lighting products, so we are not going to distinguish which ones are sold along with an SHSs or just with their own panel. It's also important for you to know that we collect data from a wide variety of companies. We split them in manufacturers and distributors, and in order not to double count, we count only manufacturers. Manufacturers are those that have their own brand. And this allows us not to double count because, for example, if you imagine the Green Light Planet brand is the Sunking products, they will be a manufacturer. Well, there's a lot of companies selling the Sunking products. So we go directly to the source and we count those, not to double count. However, we do collect a lot of data from the manufacturing distributor to see a bit what's also the supply chain. But those are not the numbers you will see here. We also then, you will see all the numbers are segmented between pay-go and cash with the definitions displayed on the screen, meaning that pay-go is what's purchasing more than one installment. And then in this presentation, it won't be displayed in details, but it is in the report, and we talk about market value of the lighting products, which is computed with the two proxies shown, different from pay-go and cash, because one is realized right away and one is realized over time. This is just for you to know. And again, if you have any questions about this, feel free to pop them in. While along the report, you have not seen the market value for appliances. We don't have yet a methodology for that, but and also the companies are a bit wary being a more nascent market. So we are exploring it. You watch this space for see coming in the coming years, but right now we don't have it included. Another thing you have to be familiar, if you've read at least one of the reports, you have seen probably some data points missing here and there, and those are hidden by what we call 3 data point control, 3 data point rule. This means that at least 3 separate manufacturers have to be reporting sales before we show it to you. And I popped in like 3 4 quick example on what it means. So in the report, you must have seen some graphs where all the lines are shown, also for cash and pay-go split. And for example, like this, everything shown means that there's 3 companies selling in both spaces, meaning that there's 3 companies selling total type of products. When there's not enough companies selling either pay-go or cash, you will see something like this. So you will see it all blanked. Because we cannot show it to you, otherwise we will breach the confidentiality with the companies. While when there is not enough companies selling this type of products altogether, the whole space will be blanked out, which is different than when there's no companies. So then you will see all the zeros. So this is also just for you to know and navigate the report in the future. Again, this is a very, one of the biggest pillar of the data collection. So if you have any questions, happy to take them in the end. Yeah, I get the honor also to start. You have to bear with me for 5 more minutes while I tell you what's my key insight for this data collection. And there were so many to choose from, but the one I picked that jumped out to me was definitely the one about SHSs. When I was plotting for myself the growth of SHSs over the past rounds, I naturally was impressed by this 40% increase, even faster than what we observed in the other rounds. Already last report, we have pointed that out, but we could not have imagined another big growth like that in this first half year. And this graph also shows you what we call SHSs, which are products above 11 watt peak, and they have various sizes that go up to over 100 watt peak. And these volumes, as written here, are unprecedented. And it shows also on the right, I plotted you a split of where are these systems sold. And for me, definitely, of course, is no news that East Africa is one of the largest market for such products. And here it takes half of the pie of the whole SHS sales. But I was impressed about the jump of West Africa, where we are seeing several schemes from government supporting the sales of SHSs, but also more companies targeting and entering such markets, which made the volumes jump from 60,000 last round in the second half of 2018 to 120,000 units, meaning that the role of West Africa in this segment is becoming increasingly important. Of course, South Asia, as we all know, has played a very large role also in the system. A lot of them, though, are what we call component-based or just panels, so they are not shown here. So there may be like the share of what we call non-affiliates or products that we don't cover may be large in South Asia and is not shown here. So I think that's important to still remind ourselves. But I was still very impressed about this number. So I think that's my key insights that I want to share with you today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sylvia. Then key insight number 2, I'll invite Salman to share his opinion.
Thank you, Evelyn, and hello to everyone who has joined in. And thanks to Sylvia for giving that, very nice intro and also sharing that insight on SHS. So, well, for me, for my segment, the key insight that I focused on out of, the ones that we have seen is basically the trends that we have seen in the portable lantern segment. Yes, of course, they remain the best-selling product category with 2.83 million sold globally, and that is nearly 70% of the total sales worldwide. Well, we have historically seen that majority of the systems are sold in cash, but we are seeing a growing number of these products also selling under pay-go scheme too. And overall, just throwing some stats that are not in this graph, Sub-Saharan Africa is basically overall accounting for 45% of the sales, and South Asia is covering around 35%. Right, now coming here for this graph, even like what is, I guess, the most interesting for me is that even with an overall growth in the portable lanterns category, we see conflicting trends for lanterns without mobile charging and also for lanterns with mobile charging option. And you can understand this by the labels that have been given underneath the graphs. Lanterns without mobile charging basically covering from 0 to 1.5 watt peak, and lanterns with mobile charging from 1.5 to 3 watt peak. So if we focus on only on lanterns without mobile charging, this would be the second best category of sales that we have seen. And we see that there is actually basically an increase in East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, and as well as in South Asia. And part of this is, of course, because of bulk purchases that happened in West and Central Africa, and even some that happened in South Asia. And now, if we are moving to maybe lanterns with mobile charging, we see that they make up 37% of the cumulative global sales volume. However, overall, there is a 10% sales decrease, and this is the conflicting trend that we were talking about, that there is a increase in the lanterns without mobile charging, but in the lanterns with mobile charging, we see a decline. And if we look into the graph, we will see that East Africa and South Asia is basically where we see the most declines, and of course, West Africa. There is also a decline in Central Africa. The bright spot is, of course, in MENA, where we see a large increase, and this is from our estimation, this is due to responses in humanitarian aid organizations, where these kind of products are becoming more and more popular. So, well, what is driving the decrease in East Africa and South Asia? The overall broad estimate would be for East Africa, seasonal trends are at play, because we normally see that the Jan to June period, it's normally the sales goes down in the first half, and it's in the second period it bounces back, but it will become clear in the next round. For South Asia, the decline is driven by lower sales numbers in particular geography, and we see a decline in India, and that has caused the overall decline there. Of course, this is driven by from ancillary data. We have seen that this can be due to import of non-solar portable lanterns that has increased. So increased competition is seen in South Asia, especially in India. There is also, there was also chances of increased regulations coming in India at the beginning of the year, and that has caused a bit of, dip. Contributed to the dip as well. So yeah, that's pretty much what we have seen overall. Of course, the MENA rise has kept the decrease of lanterns without mobile charging at a 10%. Without this, the dip could have been more. So that's pretty much from my end. So, yep.
Thanks so much, Salman. That's definitely food for thought, and a lot of different dynamics going on here. The third insight, Makena. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Evelyn. And just a quick introduction that I work for CLASP, who are Co-Secretariat of Efficiency for Access Coalition, together with Energy Saving Trust. And you'll hear from Leo afterwards. So I think what stood out for me the most and what I'm really excited about is the overall consistency and the growing participation of appliance companies in this effort. As Sylvia mentioned, it's the second time we've done this, and the reception has been fantastic and continues to grow. And that's very exciting because for a nascent sector, it is really hard to say concrete things without data. So for the first time in this sector, we're able to put some real numbers behind what we all intuitively understand is this kind of consumer interest and growth in the purchase of appliance. But now we can actually start to put the numbers, start to differentiate between what appliances are being sold in which regions. We can start to also dig in a little bit deeper about, the payment mechanisms and all the variations that are existing in this market. So that was super exciting for me. And as I said, when you have a really nascent market, to start to be able to figure out, what is the market size, what are the trends, how are sales increasing, and to attract more people into the sector, I think it's really important to see this kind of key data that is evidenced by reports such as this. So, for example, we're able to, we have a state of the off-grid appliance market report that has just come out that really use a lot of this data to give us a more clearer picture of where the market is right now and size the current market and be able to start to project to what might happen in the future. And then over to the left is a really example, to the right is an example of how we can really start to dig into this data. So this shows the breakdown of appliances, between the different appliance categories that we track. And you can see that there's a huge numbers of fan sales here, growing numbers of TV sales, and then the nascency of the more kind of higher cost appliances, the ones that are less able at the current moment to be bundled together with solar home systems, so refrigerators and solar water pumps. And here, when we look at the way the payments are split, you see this in the red, those are the cash sales, and then the light blue is the pay as you go. And you can see there's a huge kind of cash sales in the sector, but these are really driven by fan sales in South Asia, We are seeing loads of fans being sold in countries like Bangladesh on a cash basis. And this is mainly driven by the cost of the appliance in comparison to items like TVs. And now you can see on the TV side, we have pay-as-you-go really dominating that, and that's primarily in East Africa. Again, that we see that being driven by the bundling of TVs with solar home systems, which have typically been sold on pay-as-you-go. And that continued integration of appliances with solar home systems, I think, is going to be really interesting to watch the space for. Like you see here, refrigerators, solar water pumps, numbers still low. There's this kind of half-half split between cash sales and pay-as-you-go sales on the refrigerator side. And I think we'll dig into that a little bit deeper. And if you have any questions as we go ahead. And then in the solar water pumping space, again, pay-as-you-go dominating there. And I just kind of to summarize, want to say that we really encourage more and more companies to participate, because the more data that we can collect, the more we can start to understand the trends, because 2 rounds of data gives us a directional indication, but really as we continue to grow kind of participation in this data collecting effort, really hope to kind of dig deeper and show you the trends that are in the sector. So that's it for me, Evelyn. Thank you.
Thanks, Makena. Yeah, I can only chime in with what you were saying at the end. We really, we're really looking forward to increasing the growth of participating companies, and I'm also equally excited of the number of companies that we've managed to work with this round. So yeah, totally in line. Leo, over to you.
Thank you, Evelyn, and hello, everyone. This is a great opportunity, and I really think it's, I hope it works for you all the way we've changed around this presentation. As was stressed, there's just so much information here, so that we've got the full 40 slides here, which you can look through at your leisure, which is a condensed version of the whole report, as was mentioned earlier. So on my side, the real key insight was diving into this difference between the nature of the appliance sales, if you like, between Sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. But that's going to be a way to explore some of these other nuances that my colleagues have mentioned as well. So what we can really see here is on the graph on the left, you see just quite simply that we do have a complete correlation between Southern Asian sales of fans, predominantly, as you keep mentioning here, with really negligible sales of televisions being reported. And that's not just televisions. You can see that all of the other appliances have had very low sales overall in South Asia. But as Makena has mentioned, this is not only the fact that fans are being sold, but that they're being sold for cash. And she did emphasize this key point, which is really what we wanted to present here. So there's a very big difference in the actual appliances that we're seeing being demanded across different regions. We're also seeing a difference in the payment mechanisms in these different regions. And what I'd also like to leave you with is what are we also seeing in terms of who are selling these products? Now, because of confidentiality, this report can't disclose much on that. But for those of you reading the other reports of the sector, I think there are some greater findings that this is pointing us towards. And that really points to the companies we're focused on here, selling solar equipment, are generally dominating in Sub-Saharan Africa, where kits are very much a revolutionary development and that has reached millions of people. Whereas in South Asia, as proven by the IDCOL model and other models in India, we are seeing component-based systems really dominating the larger sales of solar home systems. And those are not what we're reporting, as Sylvia mentioned in our whole report here. So if you like, we do not see the companies that are selling component-based solar home systems. They're not involved, and therefore we're also not seeing so much what appliances those companies are selling. What we are getting here is direct communication with the appliance sellers themselves, and So what you're seeing is very clearly that fans are being sold not, and these sales do not accompany the sales of large solar home systems. If you remember from the earlier trend there, we were seeing that 50% of all solar home systems reported were sold in East Africa, 20% almost in West Africa, and only 14% total across the whole of Asia. So that's what's particularly interesting, I think, we're seeing here. So we're seeing appliances being sold in a different payment mechanism, in a different way in Asia. And that would also point towards why they're being sold for cash, because of course we also see that there's very little pay-as-you-go business model across Southern Asia. So that was really what started to interest me there. I just want to emphasize going back to Africa, if you like, where, just to stress what McKenna said, really, that majority of sales that we're seeing are driven by the solar home system companies and the DESCOs, who are bundling in other appliances, and the most demanded appliances are televisions right now. So that's both why we're seeing so many TVs being sold, and also why they're being sold as pay-as-you-go. I think McKenna's point about how the technology is emerging and what we'll see over time is really the one to watch here, because we are emphasizing that it is the DESCOs and PAYGO companies that are the primary sellers so far of the appliances. And so as they begin to supply more fans and refrigerators, that's going to change the landscape. We expect that to be influenced by the actual the technology development itself, but also recognition of different smaller markets where there is a need for fans and other devices which the majority of the population does not need. So with that, just wanted to hope that insight has sparked some interest to look beyond the data as well, and see, as we're pushing to get more company participation, we'll hope that will change the picture. But for now, that's a very key insight, I believe. The difference between component-based systems and kits is underlying some of the trends that we're seeing here. Thank you. And with that, I think I'll hand back to you, Evelyn.
Wonderful. Thanks, Leo. Yeah, I guess I didn't really mention it in the beginning, but I'm also hijacking some time for a key insight on impact estimates. Based on the sales each round, Google reports impact estimates of the off-grid solar lighting products that are sold. So these are calculated using a set of standardized impact metrics. You can see them. There's a link at the bottom of the slide. And these are under continuous improvement and revision. It combines, so the estimates, the metrics, they combine company data or relevant company data, so the sales and some of the product specs and characteristics, as well as some coefficients and default values that are taken from research and data and developed by a working group here at Google. And so there's quite some impressive numbers here. So as you can see, since we've started collecting data, there is about 280 million people who have ever lived and benefited from energy access or improved energy access in a household in a household. And of the systems that are still formally active or within their lifetime, there is currently, so you can say at this very moment, there's around 109 million people that are living with improved energy access currently. So, but the two that I want to focus on, so these numbers are also explained in the public report with some more narrative around it, but what I would like to highlight here are these two numbers here on the side. There's 65 million people currently accessing Tier 1 energy services. That is an increase from last year with 10%. And then next to it, there are 6.6 million people currently accessing Tier 2 energy services. And that's an increase of 34%. So that's a really exciting growth. And these Tier 1 and Tier 2 energy services is really is a measure of how much service or you can actually get from your product. So the higher, I guess, the more complete the access, the service. This can of course be directly correlated to the big increase that we saw and that Sylvia shared in the beginning in the larger solar home system segment. But yeah, this is really quite exciting. To note is that impact that's created by off-grid solar appliances is currently not included in the impact section, as metrics have not yet been created. However, the good news is that this is under development, as the Energy for Access Coalition together with Google will start working on the development of these. So maybe just to note that if you hear this and you would like to share some thoughts around this or would like to stay in the loop of this development, do let us know. And please feel free to connect to me. And with that, we are already at the Q&A section of our webinar. And this is actually wonderful. We'll have 25 minutes for Q&A, and I think I'm very excited about it. It's a lot of interaction. So please remember that during the Q&A, you can keep writing your questions in the question box. Mention if it's for one specific panelist or another. Yeah, I'll have a look at the questions that are coming in. And let me see what I can do to kick off. The first one that came in actually, and let me just go to that one directly, is for you, Salman. Christopher Carlson, he indicates that he's surprised to see that there's a decrease in lanterns with mobile phone charging. And while he thought that in general, consumers desire mobile phone charging. So do you have any idea why this has been decreased?
Hello.
Hey.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, of course, we wouldn't be able to kind of pinpoint exact reasons or any exact reason as to what has driven the down, the decrease. But we have simultaneously seen, like, we have to take a look at this picture on a more complete picture. So, for example, if we look at South Asia, yes, the lanterns with mobile charging has decreased in South Asia, but at the same moment, South Asia has also shown an increase in the multi-lights, sales. So the multi-light sales has reached nearly 92,000 units. That's definitely one of the highest that we have seen. So definitely we are seeing a preference towards higher service systems in South Asia, where we have seen one of the biggest dip in sales of lanterns with mobile charging. So this, I would say, Chris, that the picture is like on an overall basis that gives more insights than maybe only taken on the lanterns with mobile charging portion. And of course, for East Africa, we have seen explosive growth in PayGo sales and SHS sales as well. So that might also be one of the key things that is driving people towards higher systems. But again, it might again be a bit too early to comment whether that is in fact what is happening. And when we are seeing that, on the other hand, when we are seeing that lanterns without mobile charging are showing growth, some of it is also driven by bulk purchases as well. We have to keep in mind that it's not only showing consumer preference moving towards that segment, but rather it might also be made a bit fuzzy due to the bulk sales as well. I hope I could, and of course, guys in the panels, please do feel to jump in if I have missed anything.
Yeah, I'd like to add one point. That was a very comprehensive overview. I think one interesting point, which we don't want to over stress, is the nature of government influence on markets and donor influence. So if you like, over the last decade, we have seen the growth of strong commercial markets, and it is proven that there is a consistent demand for people to have both light and the minimum amount of appliance charging, if you look at it like that, is charging a mobile phone. So absolutely, we are certainly not seeing any data to contest that. But yes, the key point, we're seeing multi-light systems getting cheaper and more available, pay-go mechanisms, people being able to reach that, and therefore it's important not to forget that the smallest multi-light system does, of course, only also power a mobile phone. and multiple lights. So in essence, it gives one more of the same. And so that would be natural that we would expect to see more people buying those. The jury's out of why we're not seeing more actual still first step purchases of lights with mobile phone charging, just a solar lantern. But one of the key notes is that governments are really pushing for SDG 7 and a tier 1 access, a minimum level to achieve a universal energy access can be achieved only for a whole household with a solar lighting system. Whereas one solar lighting system reaches a minimum of 5 people a household, whereas the most powerful mobile phone charging lamps reach a number of people, the way the metrics are designed. And so we do have a lot of evidence of governments setting their minimum criteria to receive government support for products as solar lighting systems, which in fact are starting to be called solar home systems, which is again more misleading. But I think that will be a key point. If you look back 5 years ago, there was government support for all of the solar mobile phone charging lanterns. My key note is that is not happening so much now. And this is often despite the development partners' strong advice to governments that they risk leaving individuals behind. And within governments as well, there is the recognition that, of course, people can start with a solar lantern. It's just this, if you combine the availability of technology, the cost, and government drive to provide their people with the largest amount of access, I think this is worth taking into consideration as well.
All right. Thanks, Leo, for chipping in. Sylvia, I think I have 2 quite practical questions for you. One is, what is identified as an appliance that is not at the report? Oh, sorry. So what else is identified as an appliance that is not in the report, that's not a fan, TV, or water pump? And then can you perhaps also shed some light on how, are lights considered in this research?
Yeah. So those 2 are questions related to the eligible products we considered. About the appliances. In this data collection, we asked companies to report their sales of those 4 types of appliances, and we call them appliances, bundling them all together. You know, some of them are much larger, you know, like refrigeration units and solar water pumps are definitely a different scale than fans and TVs. We do ask them, we do give them the opportunity to send to us the sales of other types of appliances, such as irons or egg incubator or anything you can imagine from also solar powered mills, as long as they're solar powered. We do not, though, yet share the sales of those because they are just really small and really specific, so we wouldn't be able to pass the 3 data point control. But so that's to reply to you what other types of products we are considering. I would encourage you to look at the Pulse report and the SOGAM report for a more comprehensive view on what's out there in terms of appliance powered by solar. They offer a much comprehensive overview there. And about lights, I think if the question refers to do people use lights, of course, all the products we report here include lights. We do not consider, though, the sales of LED lights alone. So we do not ask company to tell us how many LED lights you've sold to a customer. We ask them to tell us what product they sold to a customer to power lights. And they also tell us how many lights they're included in this product. So I think that replies to the question. So they do want light, they do use light. Tier 1 energy access is light and mobile charging. Tier 2 is adding appliances on top. So here we're talking definitely about usage of light as one of the primary usages.
Cool.
And Sylvia, if I may just pop back to the last question from Eva Wulandari.
So can I actually, I have
yes,
one more
please, go
question,
ahead.
Sylvia. So because now that I still have you, what is, can you share a little bit more on what is the level of disaggregation of results available for public consumption? Are the results or insights presented only at the regional level, or is it possible to get insights at the national or even sub-national level?
Yeah, thank you, Alexandros, for that question. So in this report, there is, and here we focus mainly on regional results because we cover over 40 countries, so we didn't want to bother you with like going into the very, very single countries. We wanted to focus more on what were our key insights. we collect data on a national level and then we aggregate it upwards. We do not have anything on a subnational level because as you can imagine, for companies with over 20 products selling in over 40 countries, it would be a massive undertaking to give us that. But for now, we focus on the national level and we share everything that has at least 3 companies reporting. Some of these numbers are available. So in the report, you'll find the results, for example, for Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and most of the countries. If you're interested in products by country, that's something that Gogla can provide you. So please do get in touch. You'll have my emails in this slide deck. We just do not offer it in the public report. But it's something that we can discuss on how to provide to you.
Wonderful. Thanks for explaining. Yeah, and then Ilio, as you kindly requested, the question of Eva. So the sales of TVs are driven by bundling with solar home systems in East and West Africa. Is that the sustainable solar market package concept?
Yes, just in essence. So thank you, Eva. You've obviously been studying a lot of the reports. So I believe what you're referring to is that's a World Bank model that was trialed in Tanzania about a decade ago and pops up here and there. So no, that was actually just a different mechanism. It may have been one of the first times that the World Bank used the provision of public healthcare facilities and public police posts, public services to get a core service from vendors, and in return for which the vendors would then have a right to sell private products in the hinterland around those public institutions. So if you like, that was a very different kind of business model. What we're simply pointing at is the growth of companies to include televisions, as one of the most recent developments of bundling in appliances with solar home systems. So that's the organic growth, which really began with bundling in radios and torches many years ago, and has now grown to include fans and televisions, with some trials of refrigeration as well underway. So this is a purely commercial nature. We're just noting that some of the appliances lend themselves to being bundled along with the sales of Pago. And maybe, Evelyn, it's worth also picking up another Pago question, just to note that this this study does, there was a question from Dipna Shah just regarding how well the overall Pago methodology is going, questions on repayments, default levels. So it's a good question, and mostly just to focus that this report is only here to bring in sales data and to share that sales data with a little bit of context in order for it to be well understood, if you like, with market dynamics. We don't go into any of these deeper questions, and those are well explored in many of the other reports that we're seeing. Encourage you to look at the CGAP reports, particularly on that area. If you just Google search CGAP and Pago, you'll find a variety of different amusingly titled reports.
All right.
I could do the same with the other Pago as well, Evelyn, very quickly on institutions, if you like, or we could just move on.
Well, actually, I was thinking maybe I could give, there's another question that's like also looking at Pago, and then looking at the massive difference in cash versus Pago between Africa and Asia. But then I also wanted to kind of like move back to Makena, where on her graph, on her insight, it says that the refrigeration units are basically sold 50-50% cash Pago. So there we see a different picture. So Makena, I would like to hear a little bit from you, if you can share a bit more on this split and your thoughts around this.
Thanks, Evelyn. Just a quick one to hit back on that one about Asia and East Africa before I answer the refrigeration one. I think primarily it's the type of products being sold in this market, or the high penetration of fans in that market, which are a little bit of a lower cost product. So the necessity for installment payment is a little bit less, or the need for consumer finance is a little bit less than with the more kind of higher value appliances we're seeing in East and West Africa, which are the fridges and the solar water pumps. Now, having said that, there might be, I mean, we're just at the beginning of collecting this type of data, so we obviously don't have the whole picture of the entire ecosystem. So there might be some sales in West Africa of funds, driven by the geography and the climatic conditions there that are quite similar to some in South Asia that may not be visible here with this data collection period, in this data collection period. So I think that pay-as-you-go cash split is really primarily driven by the cost and the need for consumer finance depending on the cost of their plans. On the refrigerator side, I think it's really interesting to see that cash pay-as-you-go parity there. And for us, I think the cash sales are really driven by distributors who are selling products that are not from their own manufacturer. So just on selling products from different manufacturers, or manufacturers kind of on selling products that are a bit more higher value to a clientele that is of maybe a little bit higher income bracket. So we see those cash sales at the beginning of a market that's just trying to figure out what is the right product, what is that product to customer match. But then the pay-as-you-go sales seem to be driven by solar home system companies who are starting to bundle refrigeration, as Leah said, and as we've kind of mentioned a little bit before. They are kind of using their knowledge of the consumer, their understanding of consumer financing to kind of bundle in a new appliance, and that's increasingly showing up in the data collection. And so I think seeing the recent results, for example, of the Global Leap Awards for refrigeration are showing a trend towards lower prices of fridges. We're seeing trends towards higher efficiency. So I anticipate that the sale or the cost of refrigeration will start to become more affordable. And I think then we'll start to see a growth in the pay-as-you-go mark as we're starting to kind of be able to hit the price marks that are possible for some of these kind of lower income consumers, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa. So I think that's an exciting one to watch, especially as we continue to see the refrigerators being bundled with pay-as-you-go.
Wonderful, thanks, Makena. There was another quite interesting question for Salman, I think. I think actually you are the well placed to answer this one. Would you say that the off-grid solar home systems market in Kenya is getting saturated, or that the pay-go providers in this market are bumping into each other more often?
Well, I would say that the numbers are speaking otherwise. So certainly, we have seen like a 45% increase in the pay-go segment in Kenya this round, especially for systems in the 21 plus watt peak range. But even with that, overall sales, even in the lanterns, like the small lanterns category without mobile charging, we have seen a large growth there as well. That added with the fact that it's a stable overall regulatory situation in Kenya, there is definitely a lot of competition in there. Any new player coming in might find it hard, but at the same moment, the market keeps expanding. So the numbers are showing that there are untapped markets and locations where sales is happening. So we haven't really seen any sort of decline or any sort of sign yet that is showing that there is a crowding out. But obviously, with so many players in there, the chances of meeting them in the street is high, definitely.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what Salman said, and also to show that one of the things we also heard from our representative is that competition is actually often very good because it helps companies, assessing again their products and their pricing strategy. Therefore, often the customer benefits from that. So I think it's actually a very good thing often to have more players rather than less. But and the sales in Kenya, if you have read the report, they almost hit 1 million. So we're definitely still seeing a growth there, especially in the home system space, and also sold with appliances. So watch this space. We'll see if that will continue, will plateau in the coming rounds, but definitely that's not the case yet.
Cool. Thank you. I see a question here that's more focusing on fan sales in South Asia. I think, Leo, this one might be more for you. So there's Ted who says, trying to dig a few more insights from fan sales in Southeast Asia or in South Asia, which is predominantly cash. Do you think that this is mainly driven by seasonal demands, or solar fan effectively compete with mainstream electric fans in price or value level? You know, I guess the market might also have saturated fan appliances from Chinese imports.
Okay, yeah, this is really, surprisingly, this is a big subject for those of us without much knowledge of it. It may seem a bit obscure, but I'd recommend you review the SOGAM report, State of the Off-Grid Market for Appliances, again, recently published by the Efficiency for Access Coalition. The bottom line is that there are huge markets for AC fans for those who are grid connected, literally life-saving in countries where there is not enough money for air conditioning, but sweltering temperatures, particularly for children. These are not, you know, there's not just lifestyle products, they're really very critical. And so what we are seeing is, yes, what you're mentioning is highly relevant. Chinese imports always a great challenge, but there are internationally best-in-class manufacturers of fans in many of the Asian countries of Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India, particularly Pakistan having very strong domestic industry. So we are seeing very strong demands for DC powered solar, if you like, powered fans across Asia, and it is a very real and growing market. And quite frankly, I would like to see more export from those countries, because the products are top quality and they really could compete globally with those being pushed out from China as well. So it's really a question of where the expertise is and where the markets are. So we are seeing that, they are real markets, and yes, there will be competition between AC or DC, but the fan companies themselves have been investing in this. You raise a good question about opportunity cost, I think, which we would have to look at another area. All of the main AC appliance manufacturers are pushing for larger market share, and any company which makes an AC and a DC appliance has to juggle its resources between deciding which products, if you like, to invest in. But that's another of the bigger discussions I think we are just starting to unearth on the appliances space.
We'll need another hour. Huh?
Oh, sorry. Could I just add one small thing to that comment from Leo? You're absolutely right. And I just want to say, from some of our work in Bangladesh, we're also seeing that the driver for sale of fans is due to people backing up sometimes unreliable grid with DC fans, which, you know, like you said, cooling is a necessity in some of these geographies. So using DC fans as sort of backup when the grid is down with the AC fans is also a massive use case in many of the Asian countries.
Wonderful. So time actually does fly, and we're almost at the end of the webinar. So I still have a poll question for the audience, but I also still want to squeeze in one more question to all the panelists, and I hope you can answer in one sentence, which is, and it's more like a forward-looking, inspirational question. So if we're holding this webinar in 3 years, so it will be another 6 rounds of data collections, what would you hope would be the key insight that you can share then, which is basically, you know, how do you see the market develop, or how do you hope it? Maybe Salman, you can take a stab at this first.
Sure. In one sentence, okay. Well, I think in 6 years we will see, you know, the penetration of PAYGO to have reached, you know, unimaginable levels. We'll see its prevalence everywhere, at least in off-grid locations and you know, bad grid locations.
Makena?
I want to see higher sales of appliances across the regions. And I also would love to see a trending towards when we start understanding the cost part, which we haven't quite figured out for the appliances, a trend towards, you know, lower costs and therefore higher affordability.
Thank you. Leo?
I think the complete mainstreaming of off-grid appliances just as part of everyday life, and growth of very strong solar markets, and many of the large main players in the AC appliance market having moved in and partnered with the pioneers that we're currently seeing.
Nice one. Sylvia, last.
Yes, I think I would really like to see also maybe new models. So I would actually see probably a new model, not only cash pay-go, but something else, as well as more appliances types, so power mills and other new exciting types.
Cool. I love it. Short and brief. So for the audience, I have one more poll question for you, which is about the format of this webinar. We want to know if it was insightful for you. So I hope to see something, be very frank, be open. We're trying out different formats. So for the next one, we want to know what we can do different. Now, the poll doesn't really give you, a means for input, but after the webinar ends, there's a pop-up that will come onto your screen that you can give more feedback, or you can just simply shoot me an email with your thoughts. That would be very much appreciated once we go back into the next round. So thank you very much for your attendance. Of course, we have an online website where we always publish the public report, and we also have a very nice interactive little dashboard where we show some country highlights. So if you're interested, definitely go and check it out. For more information on impact, we have an impact hub, and if you are interested in more data insights or in actually, reporting your sales, if this has inspired you, then please get in touch with Sylvia. Just to note that reporting your sales gives you access to a lot more granular data and a personalized company report. So it could very much be worth it to consider to join this data collection. And with that, I would like to thank my panelists who have been stellar, I would say. I love the answers and the openness. Yeah, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much, everyone. Until next time.